I just want to talk a little bit about Warriors. So I was at the library browsing books and I happened upon the Warrior Cats. Okay, listen, it's been a long time since I read Warrior Cats. I was homeschooled. My mom taught me how to read. She had a really hard time with it. Now we know, and by we I mean me, that I have some pretty bad dyslexia problems. And thank you, Mom, for teaching me how to read. I know it was probably one of the hardest things you've ever done. It took a very long time, okay? And I just couldn't care. I could not care about reading, okay? I was not in that phase of my life. My friends weren't really reading at that age yet. My best friend at the time, who was my neighbor, she also did not care about reading. But she was a horse girl, okay? I was not. We lived in the country, but I was not a horse girl. My family, we didn't own horses. And I was scared of horses, actually, like real life horses. So I wasn't into their real life horses either. Also, Bruce, their miniature horse, stepped on my feet multiple times when I was holding him in a parade. Okay, so as the lore of my life happens, The Goblet of Fire was the first adult book that I read. I know that I had read the Spiderwick series before that. After that, my nerd friend group got into the Del Toro series, which I would love to reread. We were obsessed with the Del Toro books. Anyway, they read a lot of big serious books, and I was not really a reader. I felt like I was cosplaying reading. My best friend at the time, who was my neighbor, wasn't really a reader, but at some point she got into the Warrior books. We went to gymnastics together once or twice a week for 2 years. And I believe that the Warrior lore happened during that time. I must have been doing gymnastics maybe from 10 to 12. After Warriors was totally done, my friend was then into Twilight around when Breaking Dawn came out, which was in 2008. So I was 12. So all that whole huge thing to say, I read Warriors sometime between 9 and 12. 9 years old and 12 years old. Closer to 9. Okay, so I was very young. And in my memory, these books kind of went on and on and on in a good way. I finished this book. Okay, the first one is an 8-hour audiobook. I did the audiobook. And it wasn't that, I was thinking that was longer than I thought it would be. Because it's it's a little kid's book. So I was oh, it's a little bit longer than I thought. Well, then I listened to it and I was these things are happening so fast. I must have taken a long time to read this first book because I remember the events of the first book seemed like they were over a very long period of time to me in my little kid brain. The characters who died in the first book, I remember them so vividly. They were characters forever. I was shocked when one of the characters died, and I was whoa, I thought she was here for way longer. The whole story of it, I was thinking that what happened in this first one would have happened over 6 books, but it wasn't. It was very quick. And now I'm how many of these books did I read? I don't know, but I remember plot points that happened later in the first series, but I don't remember if I read them or if my friend who was my neighbor spoiled them for me and I didn't actually read that book. Okay, so when I saw them at the library, I was oh my God, I need to read these books again. So I got the first one from my library on the audiobook and I listened to it, and then I looked up the series, and there's so many, and I knew that there was a lot, but I don't think I realized how it worked. The funny thing was that I remember this, I was telling my husband about this. This is so stupid kid stuff. I remember that I was really into these books. I was living for them. I was shedding tears when cats were dying, okay? But I specifically remember that I didn't want to let my friend who was my neighbor, who was the horse girl, I didn't want to let her know how affected I was by these books. And I did not want my 2 friend groups, either one of them, the nerds or not, to know that I read these cat girl books and then I was loved them. It's the ultimate, I didn't want anyone to know about this because I was this is real nerd stuff. Because it's a little bit easier to be a nerd when half of the population is a nerd of the same thing. It is much harder to be a nerd when you know one person who has ever heard of or read the books. And to me, it was like a little off the beaten track. And I knew that it would change my friend's viewpoint of me, so I never let them know about it. I just wasn't going to let them know. I just wanted them to think I was cool. They probably did not think I was cool, period, no matter what I did. But I was like, I had to preserve my reputation amongst my friends. Anyway, regardless, all that to say, I definitely read the first 2. But I'm not sure how many more I read then. The way it works is that there's 6 books in each of these series. And so there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 series, 6, 7. Oh my God. It's just like, I know that I used to love these books so much. I'm so excited to love them again, unabashedly. I'd be loving these books. To talk a little bit about the book itself, which I haven't said a single word about this whole time. It's a fun story. Follows Rusty, our protagonist, who was a house cat, but then was like a little bit too feisty to be a house cat. He was like out there trying to catch mice and stuff. He gets kind of like, they ask him to come to their clan, and it's because of a prophecy or something that one of the clan leaders saw, because otherwise they never would have let him in, because they do not need more mouths to feed. But they let him in. They train him to be a warrior. A warrior is part of the cat clan. They're not all warriors. They're like medicine cats, and then there's like cats that have babies, and then there's like the old cats, and then there's like the hierarchy of the leader cats, and then there's like the baby cats, and there's 4 clans in this area, and they just like fight each other pretty much, and they hate each other, and there's like nefarious things that some of these cats are doing, trying to like gain power. And our main cat is like, he's got his paw on the pulse all the time. Somehow he just like knows what's going on. Okay, he's like behind the scenes, in front of the scenes, he's everywhere all at once, because he somehow knows everything. He just climbs his way up the ranks, but he is like in training to be a warrior cat the entire first book. At the very end of the first book, he becomes a warrior cat. And so he went from like being discriminated against because he was a house cat to moving up the ranks. But I remember being so affected by how they refer to humans and everything in this book, like how they use cobwebs on their, and I'm saying this in a good way because this was like so exciting to me as a kid, how they used cobwebs on their wounds, and like their herb use was like very cool. The way they talked about cars, and then like 2 legs humans, very cool to talk about that, and talking about roads, and then the way they talked about the what do they call it? The moonstone, or the star stone, or the something. And like just trying to figure out what a thing is in the real world, because they think it's like something crazy and magical, and some of the things are magical. And then they like have prophecies, and he has all these dreams, and it's very compelling, very fast moving. I'm planning on getting the next one on paper and just like flying through it. They're very easy, but I definitely want to read the first 6. I really like that it's like a smaller series within a larger world, because it's just like bite-sized stuff. Like, oh, there's a ton of these books, but I can just read 6 and that's the whole story. If I want to read more, I can read the next 6 and that's another whole story. I love that idea. I wish more books did that. I know the marketing behind Warrior Cats is like insane amazing. It's hilarious that as a kid I thought none of my friends even knew about it. I would be like, it would be so funny if I found out that like 1 or 2 of my friends was also insane crazy about it but never said a word about it. That would be the funniest thing on earth, because now my friends are all readers. Okay, they have been readers. Anyway, Into the Wild is the first book by Erin Hunter, the one and only Erin Hunter. So fun. I so recommend it to kids who are getting into, like, if you have kids that are getting into chapter books, I'm definitely gonna like buy these and keep these around for my kids when they're around that age. Very fun, very exciting. I love the thought of like, I mean, me and my friend who was my neighbor would talk about this a lot, like the thought that this actually exists, because you wouldn't know because it's in the woods and you're human and you could never find it. And I loved that idea. of like, maybe my house cats are spies in this, like, for the clan or whatever. Maybe they have a second life, or when a cat would like disappear or something, it was like they're out there in the woods living with the clan. It's so fun to be a kid and have a fantasy world that you're crazy about, and I'm so excited to get into these books again and be crazy about this fantasy world in real life. And I will be telling my friends about it, except now I don't have very many friends, so I'm telling you instead.